Everything I do to myself. I'd heard this idea many times before, read about it, heard people talk about it, how everything is just a reflection of myself, and so everything I do, I'm doing to myself. Yeah, I always liked that, because to me that was the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, because you are doing it to yourself. So treat everyone and everything as yourself. And yet, even though I always wanted to do that, I didn't. In fact, it seemed many times I would do the exact opposite. Inevitably, I'd end up treating someone or something the exact way in which I did not want to be treated. It really came clear for me recently because I saw this pattern of feeling something and not wanting to feel it, not knowing what to do with the feeling, not even understanding why the feeling was there. So the common response would be to stuff it down or to shut down, to think that somehow I could become like invisible in a way. Like this upset that I was feeling could be hidden. Which is kind of funny because who would I be hiding it from? And that kind of begs the question. So why didn't I want to be authentic about how I was feeling? Why didn't I want to just be honest and be with whatever I was feeling? And what's really in awareness right now is the idea that there can be rejection. I always felt that if I was completely honest about everything I was feeling, everything I was thinking, everything I desired, that at some point or another I'd be rejected. Oh, I'm not supposed to think that. I'm not supposed to feel that. It's not okay to do those activities. That's why there's laws. That's why there's rules. Because if everyone just did what they wanted, it'd be utter chaos. Which is kind of funny because it's almost like that's what there is already by accepting that belief. These rules and these laws don't actually prevent anyone from doing anything, including picking up a gun and shooting someone else. They may seem like they're deterrents, but when a choice is made to do something, yeah, rules and laws can't stop that. So who is it that I'm afraid of being rejected by? And by extension, who is it that's afraid of rejection? And what's interesting is I found that because I didn't feel accepted and felt as though I was being rejected, I was actually doing that to the reflections of myself first. By shutting down emotionally when things would come up, and then projecting that onto whoever or whatever I'm around, and thinking, oh, if only that person were different, or if only the situation were different, then I'd be happy. Then I'd be accepted. Then I would be worthy of taking up space in this world. And yet that's totally reversed, because then it's on something that I'm telling myself I can't control, and giving away my power to have acceptance, thinking that it will ever come from someone outside. I find that when I wake up in the morning, I look at my emails, and there's almost like this sense of excitement, and then I look at the emails, and then, and it's like, what is this letdown? And what I realize is there's been this desire to find acceptance. Like, maybe I'll wake up and so I'll be like, oh, hey, I'd love to get in touch with you today, or I really love what you do, or even just I love you. And so when it doesn't seem that happens, it just reinforces the belief that I'm not worthy of being accepted, that I haven't been accepted, and that I've been rejected by that which created me. So how does that cycle ever end? And it feels like it has to be a reversal. It's like there's this voice that's been continually saying things like, I'm not worthy, I shouldn't speak my mind, it's not okay to do certain things in the world because no one else does them. And that seems to be really acute when it seems like there really is no one else doing something that I feel to do. Yeah, even like this, I felt very strongly for a while that there's a way to be without needing to always get by giving. Or in other words, I felt there's a way to give whenever I feel to give without needing to have something back in return. I've always just felt like whatever it is that created everything would take care of everything. And yet there's been this belief, this almost like opposite belief, that may be true, but that doesn't include me. This thing that I call me was somehow created in this world where everything seems to be in harmony. The seasons, the animals, everything. It's a cycle. And it may look like there's destruction. It may look like certain animals eat certain things. It may look like certain weather patterns destroy things. And yet it keeps going. So there's been this belief that everything's taken care of except for this thing I call me. So what ends up happening by believing this voice that's saying that, I've ended up doing the exact opposite of that which it is that I really want. I really like it when I feel as though the energy, the emotions, the feelings, the thoughts, everything, including the words, all seem to be in coherence. I've always felt off when I'm speaking one way and I'm feeling another, which is to shut down emotionally and then just put on this mask, this face. And so I'd get frustrated when I would see other people doing the same thing, or what I was judging them to be doing, because it seemed to be easier to do that than to admit that I was doing that. or even just the idea. I've always loved to explore. I'd love to try almost everything. Well, maybe not everything, but a lot of things, and it always felt like the reflection was, that's not okay. It's not okay to be a jack of all trades and master of none, or that it's even not possible to be a master of something while being a jack of all. And so then I would take this belief that it's really not possible and see it reflected back to me and then buy into it. And so it's really like what Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. It's like that spark, that urge, that desire is the continual source of the flame of life. And the beauty is there's so many reflections of how life can look. There seems to be almost 8 billion humans on the planet now. And many non-human animals and plants and even species from other planets and galaxies. There seems to be so many ways to classify and define. And they're all reflections of the same thing, the same energy, the same force. So it seems as though all these teachings, whether it's A Course in Miracles or the Bhagavad Gita or Taoism, Buddhism, whatever, it seems like whether it's an ism or a book or a teaching within an ism, it feels like they've all been there to just see this reflection principle. That what I do to myself. So when I'm afraid of rejection, I end up rejecting others. Yeah, when I don't love myself, then I don't love others. When I think that what I choose to do or think or be is wrong, then I end up judging others as being wrong. And the interesting thing is, it's like first there seems to be a denial or a rejection of the experience, of the feelings and the thoughts, and that isn't really what I want, so then I project it out, and then because that outward circumstance never seems to change or give me what it is I really want, then it comes to a certain point where I just boil over and explode, or had boiled over and exploded. And then it felt like there was no going back, like bridges had been burned and what was once possible was no longer possible. This idea that there could be a running away who's running? And where am I running to? And what am I running from? Will acceptance come from a place? Will it come from a person? A thing? When I don't truly accept myself, then how could it ever come from anywhere? It's interesting because I also got to see there's been this thought that once I leave, the situation, the people, the place are somehow better off for that. Like the people that I had been around are now able to be happy, able to enjoy what they really want to do, instead of just putting up with me. And it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then I'm not really being that which I want to be. I'm not offering this gift of being to myself and to the reflections of myself. So I hadn't allowed myself to be happy when I was actually feeling like I was happy, because it wasn't okay. And that is felt by all reflections of myself. And I know how I felt when I've wanted to be joyful and extending and just being, and feeling like there was something outside of me that wasn't, and how I didn't really want to be around that. So then I end up doing that. I end up doing the same thing. So how could it not be that I'm creating a scenario that's actually playing out the fear? If I don't want myself, if I don't accept myself, when I don't love myself, I'm actually creating scenarios where that gets reflected back to me. And that reflection is even just a belief. That may not even be what's happening. So yeah, it's just become really acute in awareness right now that self-love is the key. So then why don't I love myself? Why don't I accept that the thoughts I have are okay, that the things I want to do are okay, that the way I want to be is okay, that there can even be an okay or a not okay, or a right and wrong? And what comes with that question is the belief that the thing where I came from, or the thing that created me, doesn't accept me, doesn't love me. And many times this thing is given the name God. So God created me, and now I have to show that I'm worthy of God's love. If I don't live my life a certain way, then I won't be loved by God, or I will be punished by God, either in this lifetime or what appears to be when the life ends, upon death. Which begs the question, why would God create something only to reject it? What would be the point? From that perspective, it seems a little perverse. And yet, that's exactly what I'm doing all the time. Whether it's with my body, or with a song, or even a recording like this recording. It seems to happen, and there's this voice going, well, that sucked. You really screwed that one up. Oh my God, you might as well throw that away. Why? What was the point of it in the first place then? If it's possible to have something, quote unquote, outside reject something, then why do it? It wouldn't be to get approval from that outside thing. It has been, and yet that's never worked. So what if, instead of doing it to be accepted, how about just the sheer joy of the moment? Like right now. Hmm. Yeah, so it feels really good to just get in touch with this pattern and see how it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that actually never really fulfills. It fulfills in the sense that it will keep going as long as it's chosen, but it's never really given me what I wanted. So in that sense, it's not fulfilling. And that's why I also feel similar to my understanding of how the story of Gandhi lived his life as an experiment. Because it seems so often I have this spark, this desire, this tickle to do something, and especially when it doesn't look like there's anyone doing it the same way, it's like, okay, well, let me try it. Let me do it. And when I'm honest with myself, I'm actually really happy. It's only when I do it and then I look outside and be like, ooh, was that accepted? Was that okayed? Did people like that? Is that wanted? Do people really want what I have to offer? Or are they just saying nice things and really thinking, ugh, what a bunch of BS. Or that was terrible. Where would this idea come from that could even be the case unless I already entertained myself that I was terrible? Or that what I wanted to do wasn't okay? Reminds me of Peter Sellers' character in Being There. He says what he feels to say, he does what he feels to do, and doesn't seem to matter at all what anyone else says in response or does in response. Whether they think he's completely crazy and they want to try and discredit him, or whether they think he's a genius and they can't wait to hear more. Either way, it doesn't seem to matter. The character's going to keep being, because that's all there is. And that's why I've always loved when I have been able to see reflections of things that maybe were considered to be impossible or outside the scope of quote-unquote reality. I remember as a kid, 60 Minutes was on the television, and there was a expose or a documentary or whatever about these monks who lived up on a mountain. And so the journalists would interview all these scientists, all these doctors about, okay, what would happen if you lived up on a mountain in these temperatures, and how would the body respond, or what would happen to the body. And in this case, it seemed like the weather was so cold that the medical doctors were saying, well, you get frostbite within seconds, you get hypothermia, you die within hours or less. And so I just remember seeing these images of this journalist and the team all being bundled up in this really heavy, warm gear to go visit these monks, and they would get there, and the monks were not only wearing just their regular robe or whatever the word for it is. It was just a simple piece of cloth wrapped around them. So they weren't bundled up to the nines with all this gear. And not only were they dressed that way and able to survive without getting frostbite and pneumonia or hypothermia or whatever and then dying, they were actually, the snow around them was melting. And there was something inside of me that just said, yeah, of course. That's the way it works. It's a choice. It's a choice to be in harmony with that which we already are in harmony with, because we are it. So it's all just this movement of energy, this force. And when there's a willingness to be led by the force, or to be the force as it's moving, then anything is possible, and nothing's impossible. And there's examples of like Bruce Lee being able to punch someone from like an inch away. Or I've seen examples of many people that can actually project people, like a whole chain of people outward. Like there can be 5, 6 people pushing on someone, and that person, just by the very nature of thinking it, of being it, is able to make people go flying. And yet there's been a fear of totally accepting that. And that's where the reflections of doubt seem to come. When I would talk about things like the monks on the mountain, or being able to even punch someone without physically touching them. Not that I want to punch someone, it's just that it shows that anything is possible. Where did the rules of science come from, or the laws of science? Where did the laws of medicine come from? And how is it that one system of medicine, let's say, can say another system of medicine is wrong or incorrect, or it doesn't work? How does it work? What is a placebo? If I can think I'm taking something that's going to make me better, and I get better, and someone else took something different and got better, then was it really the thing that was taken, ingested, or otherwise? Or was it the belief, the thought, that this has the power to do something, that this has the power to heal or to cure? And so there had been a fear of truly just letting go, of accepting that anything is possible. I always loved the parables of Jesus. It was like, in that state of total acceptance and love, anything is possible. And it's not about the thing that happens. It's not about turning water into wine, or having a blind person see again, or raising someone from the dead. It wasn't about those things. Those things were only there, or only seemed to happen, as a way to accept what all these teachings are saying, that everything is connected and that anything is possible. It's as though it's all hypnotism. There seems to have been this constant voice in the mind that's been reinforcing this hypnotism as long as there seems to have been an awareness of the mind, of thoughts in the mind. So this thought that I'm not good enough, that I shouldn't or couldn't or wouldn't, that I shouldn't do the things I want to do. Is this hypnotist always saying, you're not good enough, you don't belong, you're not connected, you are at the mercy of a force outside of you, and you can maybe hide from it for a while, but you can never escape it. So all these teachings and all these reflections, like Yogananda. I loved the Autobiography of a Yogi. It was Yogananda relating the experiences that he had in his life, where all these things seemed to happen that would normally be outside the scope of what would be considered possible. A person that could manifest two bodies in two locations at the same time. A person that could go decades without eating. The list goes on and on. So whether it's Buddha or Jesus or Yogananda or St. Francis, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, these have all been stories and parables as another form of hypnosis. Instead of reinforcing this voice that's saying, don't do that, you're not good enough, whatever. All these things were there to say, you are. You are perfect because you were created perfect. And it's only a choice to believe that you're not that results in the experience of feeling that way. And then projecting outward and wanting to destroy and wanting to kill, as though somehow that would make it better. And not realizing that it's the believing of this voice that I'm not good enough that actually is death. It's a continual death. Every time there's an allowance for that without the possibility of looking at it or questioning it, then it's death. So it feels like the time has come to really be aware. Because any single thought, unquestioned, is hypnosis. So instead of rejecting the thoughts that I'm not good enough or that I can't do what it is I feel to do, or that I'll be rejected somehow, instead of stuffing that down and ignoring it, which then results in the projection and the explosion and the running away, I choose to acknowledge and then question. And then hear this other voice. And even accept the hypnosis of the other voice. It's like, feels like for so long there's been an acceptance of the voice of, let's say, fear or ego or death without questioning. And so that's been the experience. And yet this feels like there's been a questioning that's been bubbling to the surface as far as I can remember. And so it feels like a period of hearing the other voice until it gets to the point where that other voice is no longer questioned. That voice is saying, you are perfect, you are limitless, you are joy. That's creation is just being. And if there seems to be a spark or tickle or desire, then be it, follow it, do it. All these things. Until that voice is no longer questioned. Oh, come on now, that can't really be true. These are all like nice words and fancy ideas, but really? It's like, yeah. It almost feels as though this voice of fear has been there and it hasn't even been questioned or looked at for so long, or what appears to be so long. And then there is a questioning, and then it turns out there's another voice that's been there all along. It just hasn't been listened to. And then there seems to be two voices going on. And there's been so much allegiance to the voice of fear that there seems to be a questioning of this new voice, this voice of love. And so it feels like now is the time to really accept this new voice as the hypnosis program that I want. If there's going to be hypnosis, if the experience comes from belief in thought, then I choose to believe in the voice of love. Because the other way has never really gotten the experience that I've really been wanting. So instead of waking up each morning hoping for an email that someone wants me or loves me, or logging onto Facebook hoping that someone wants me to come visit or wants to join with me, or walking around town wanting people to smile, or even just give me space to walk without running into me. Instead of all of that, feels like now is the time to be that which I've always been seeking. To be the happiness I've always been seeking. To allow time and space for the words that feel most coherent to the experience to come forth, instead of trying to rush words or fake it. To treat every place I am as though it's mine, in terms, well, specifically in terms of cleaning. It's kind of funny because I've always felt like I wanted the area in which I felt I was to be clean. And when I thought that it depended upon others to do the same, I'd get frustrated. And I'd actually end up doing the exact opposite. There was a period of time in my life where all my tables in my house were covered with papers. There was barely any room to put a cup. And I could always find what I needed exactly when I needed it. So it was like never a huge problem. So it was almost like that was okay, even though it wasn't really what I wanted. And I find that lately I've been in places and I just end up cleaning. It's just like a total reflection of my mind. Instead of thinking, oh, someone else made that mess, or it's someone else's responsibility to clean it up. That's like saying, oh, it's someone else's responsibility to love me. Someone else's responsibility to accept me. It's like, no, I like a clean space. And there's nothing wrong with dirt. After all, without dirt, how would there be a planet? How would there be plants? So I can accept dirt and mud and rain, and I can accept everything. And I can also say that I like to have an orderly, clean space. Not as though it's the source of my happiness, as though when I walk into a space it doesn't seem to be that, all of a sudden that's a reason to be unhappy. It's because that's what I feel. That's what I like. So that's what I choose to do. That's what I choose to be. Because that's how I want my mind. I like it when everything just flows. And there doesn't seem to be effort. It's all just synchronistic. There really are no coincidences. When I seem to think, oh, it would be nice to have this, and it shows up, that's not an accident. So as an experiment, this life is really just a wish-granting machine. Then I want to be really clean and clear on my wishes, just like I want to be really clean and clear in the environment where I find myself. I no longer want to just accept the voice of doubt and fear and death as though it doesn't matter. I want to see that whatever I think is what I'm wishing for, and it will be granted. At least the experience of it will be granted. Hmm. The sense of liberation, a sense of freedom that I'm feeling, just settling into that, accepting that. As though it's happened. And it's time to play. Hmm. Hmm. So, in this moment, I feel to take on, to be a cheerleader. Yeah. To listen to that voice of love that's always cheering me on and accept it unconditionally. And as a result, it seems like the fragrance or the effect of that will be that I can do that everywhere I am and every time I am, with all reflections of I am. So instead of being a reflection of judgment, I can be a reflection of love. And that feels like that's the calm in the storm. So even if it appears as though there's reflections that don't choose to be the same way, that's awesome. Because that's myself making a choice to be. Just like there appears to be an I making a choice to be. I choose to be a cheerleader. To accept the message for myself that I am perfect love. That I am as I was created and never left the source of creation. That I am supported in that flow, in that natural way of the energy. And then that becomes an offering to all reflections of myself. So I'm talking to myself. And what I do to myself. So I accept myself. I love myself. Which is to say, I accept all and I love all. There can't really be rejection. There can only be an experience of a choice that appears to be called rejection. So I make another choice. I I choose to accept that I am. Thank you. I love you.